chit-chatting a little bit.
Okay.
So that's good. And as soon as we count down, it should 3, 2, 1. Why does it say live in 5 minutes? That's weird. It
Uh,
should be going live now.
no, it's definitely on. It's because I've got it open up on my phone, so we're live streaming.
Oh, okay. Apparently mine didn't do it. Let's see.
Let me just test the audio and see how it sounds. Let me put my earbuds in real quick.
Oh yeah, there we are. Hey, that's weird. It didn't update. Hello everybody that's already here. We're just gonna do a couple of quick audio tests just to make sure that everything sounds okay. Dana's getting his earbuds in. We hopefully have a bit less of a lag time this time. I set it to a lower delay. So hopefully we have a bit less of a lag time. We're not going to try anything real time this time anyway. So
Mike, if I can get you just to turn my microphone down just a splash.
yep, you bet.
Hey there, Danny, Carmelita, Ruben, Bobby, welcome back.
Yep. How is everybody doing?
Uh, let's see here.
And likewise, folks, feel free to give us feedback on the audio. Again, this is only the third time we've done this, so looks like we've got Kay Rodriguez back as well. Hello, thank you for joining us again. Dana's
Okay.
lovely better half has joined us as well. So
Yes.
welcome, Angie.
Hibachi. That's great.
Yeah, that for everybody that tuned in for the live stream, that is a special treat that you got, the origin of that username. So cherish that with you. Take it to your grave. It's a secret that belongs only to this select group of people.
I'm going to. I'm just going to share. I'm just going to share real quick that we're live on Twitter and Facebook. So give me just a second here.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, okay. Everybody's coming in here. Perfect. It's good to see everybody again.
Hey, so we've got our friend Jarrett is here for the first time. Alive Garden. Jarrett, good to see you here, man. Happy to see that you joined us. John Francois is back as well. Yeah, we're getting some regulars here. I
Now
appreciate
this is
this.
good. This is really good. Hang on just a second, everybody. I'm just texting out some links here.
And Danny, it's hard to know on the buffering video, unfortunately, whether that's on my end or on yours. The drawback to doing the lower latency is it does mean your video might buffer just a little bit more, but hopefully it'll also mean that you won't see quite the delay when you get caught up. One of these days, we're also going to, well, my goal hopefully is that I can eventually get out. Sound is a bit low except for Dana. Let me see if I can do something about that. Turn my sound up just a little bit.
While he's doing that, let me just ask the group, has anybody watched anything interesting in the past few days?
While we're waiting for them, Dana, have you watched anything interesting in the past few days?
Well, like we were talking about off screen before we started recording, I did watch Terminator Dark Fate last night. For those listeners of the podcast, you will know that we are in the middle of a franchise retrospective on all the Terminator films. We've recorded 3. I'm releasing part 2 tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to part 3 that we recorded, Mike. That was a great episode. And then we're going to get to the other 3 films in the franchise, and so I've been rewatching them. So that's what I've been doing.
So John Francois just watched The Platform. I have not been able to get myself geared up to watch that one. And then Kay Rodriguez has watched I'm So Not Okay With This and Black Mirror. Carmelita has watched some old favorites the last couple of days. Wow, there's people are watching a lot of good stuff. And we've got some actual conversations going on in the chat. This is awesome.
I'd like to point out real quick, if I could, that Angie and I were hanging out yesterday, and she'd actually never heard of Black Mirror, so I actually had to just kind of give a quick series overview and tell her how spectacular the show is. But I warned her, I gave the strongest warning that episode 1 of season 1 is very disturbing, and it's not indicative of what you should expect with the rest of the series. I'd be curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on Black Mirror.
Danny, refresh your screen. Hit F5. I had that problem when we started going that I wasn't seeing anybody else's chats, but try refreshing your screen, and that will hopefully get you everybody else's chats. I'm just going to scroll up here a little bit really quick to see what else we've got. Carmelita brought up one that I want to just take a minute to talk about. Daniel Isn't Real, from Adam Egypt Mortimer. Very good movie. Really, really enjoyed that one. Stars Patrick Schwarzenegger and an actor who I'm blanking on his name, but I will tell you is the spitting image of Shane McDermott from one of my all-time favorite movies, Airborne. So I really, really recommend checking out Daniel Isn't Real. It's a good, nice, creepy little horror movie.
Now, let's go back to Black Mirror real quick. Oh, hey, Paul. Paul's back in. The question is that first episode, and let's keep it spoiler free, because I know at least one person on here who hasn't seen the series yet. So I'm just curious what people's thoughts are on Black Mirror. Paul says Black Mirror is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Paul, I'm going to fire a question at you. What did you think of Bandersnatch, the interactive Black Mirror movie? While we're waiting for that, Mike, what are your thoughts on Black Mirror?
I actually haven't watched very much Black Mirror, believe it or not. I have watched what is the one from season 2 that everybody liked? I'm totally drawing a blank. I've only watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but I've enjoyed it. The couple of episodes that I've seen, I've enjoyed it. So that's about all I have to contribute, unfortunately.
And Kay Rodriguez is not doing a great job of keeping it spoiler free. I just want to point that out. So now this says message retracted. Bobby says, do you guys watch Westworld? I'm really late to the party on that one. I have not seen a single episode of that.
And I watched the first season, and I'll be honest, I was not a fan. I do want to shout out our, hey, Eamon Sullivan's here. Welcome. Our co-host of the Dana Buckler Show, Ashley, is doing a Shat the Movies podcast dedicated solely to Westworld. So if you enjoy us blathering on, you should definitely check that out and listen to them blather on.
I just want to quickly ask Eamon, my good friend from Dublin, Ireland, who's been on the show once, and we've actually recorded another episode which will come out tomorrow. Eamon, what time is it over there right now? Because it's 8 o'clock here on the East Coast of the United States.
Bobby just said Ash is amazing. I concur. Those who've listened to Ash and I on the same episode have known we occasionally can squabble over movies, but I think as a human being, she is absolutely a phenomenal person. And I also want to shout out that the podcast she did with her husband, Tom, No Need to Argue, is one of the most moving and emotionally honest podcasts I have ever listened to in my life. And so I really do recommend everyone check that one out.
I am 100% going to concur with you on that one. It's especially that very first episode. It is very emotionally raw, and it's incredible.
Hurt. Yeah, it almost hurt to listen to. And I mean that in the best way.
And obviously, great content speaks for itself, but she charted very quickly on that one. Her show really hit the charts high quickly with that episode, and it was well deserved. Let's see,
1:08 a.m. for Eamon there in Dublin. So
there you go.
Yeah, we appreciate you staying up late with us, buddy.
Eamon, can you give the people watching right now a little teaser of what our next discussion is going to be about later this week? Because you're coming back on the show, and we've had decided that we're going to talk about a particular franchise just for fun. You want to just throw that out? Let's see. K. Rodriguez says maybe we could all try watching something together, so we have more to talk about when we all can next week.
So I ran a Netflix. We were supposed to do a Netflix party Sunday night, and unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. But I did one for a Scott Adkins movie this week that wasn't affiliated with Dana's show. I just did it and had a couple friends. If you haven't used the Netflix Party app, it's absolutely fantastic. It's the best way to watch movies together. So I strongly recommend that. So Kay, I'm fine. We can set up something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and that's my fault. I had to pull the plug on it. I'll be the first to admit, if we're being honest right now, this whole thing's getting to me a little bit every once in a while, and I just find that I'll plan to do some things and then I'll get backtracked and I'll put some things off, and next thing you know, I've got a whole workload in front of me, which is great because it gives me something to do. But at the same time, yeah, we were going to watch a Lethal Weapon movie, and we'll try to do that again. But yeah, I think we should definitely set up a Netflix watch party sooner than later. I feel like we've all got the time on our hands to do it.
Well, and just again, being honest, Dana, I don't mind setting it up and doing it on my end. And then that way, if
Yeah.
you want to join in, you're free. I just never feel comfortable using your branding or using, your podcast title without your permission.
You go right ahead. You never have to ask me.
I appreciate that.
100%. Let's see. I second the idea of more Jaws discussions. Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Well, let me just say something real quick. We're going to talk about Jaws, okay? Well, this was not a boating accident. It wasn't a propeller. It wasn't coral reef, and it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark. All right, sorry. That was my little moment there.
You were giving the people what they demanded the last time.
Yes.
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. To change topics really quick. So Two Strike Noise, my buddy Jeff, noted that today is the anniversary of one of the greatest baseball movies of all time. The Sandlot came out 27 years ago. And Dana knows this, but I don't know that everybody else knows. It was filmed here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I am always pro things filmed in Utah. And we tried to, last summer when Jeff came to visit me, we tried to go find a lot of the shooting locations. And we found the Sandlot itself, which unfortunately is now an overgrown, weedy field. And it was just very disappointing. It had turned into a field. And then for I want to say the 25th anniversary, they shaved it all down, turned it back into the Sandlot, but then immediately let it become overgrown again. And it was almost impossible to find because it's been built. There's just a bunch of houses and stuff built around it right now. So you wouldn't even notice that it's the Sandlot. But we did at least find the location. So I guess that's something. And we also found the neighborhood where all the kids live. And immediately we were going to take a bunch of pictures, and then we got immediately creeped out by the fact that there were these two like middle-aged white dudes like stalking around this very clearly suburban neighborhood taking pictures. And so we got like one or two and then peaced out. So if you haven't seen The Sandlot, folks, check it out. It's a delightful movie.
Absolutely. Paul says, can I ask something non-movie related? Absolutely, Paul. Whatever you want. I said Emin. Oh, he's going to kill me just for saying that. That's how I thought he pronounced his name for years until we actually started chatting on the phone. Eamon says, you yell Barracuda. People think, huh? Well, I know where this is going. So
let's see what else we got here.
Let's see. It's if it's too off topic, I don't remember.
Just so you know, Paul, there is no off topic. This is open for anything. We lost a little bit of Dana.
I have not. Oh,
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good. You're back.
Okay. Let's see here. Just to answer Paul's question, I have not picked up Jedi Fallen Order. My nephew did, and I spent a little time with him playing the game. I thought it looked incredible. I think you and I actually had a discussion about this last time we were hanging out. What about you, Mike?
I haven't played it yet. I used to play a lot of games, but now with work and stuff, it's kind of like something's got to give. And if I have time, I'm gonna watch a movie over playing a game. I will say it's old or older, but I did play the. And I was telling you, Dana, this week I played the Sony Spider-Man game this year, and that was terrific. That was just absolutely fantastic. I am gonna play Fallen Order at some point, but just haven't gotten there yet.
I have been splitting my time when I do game. Been playing a lot of Far Cry 5, which is a game that I've already beat once. But what's remarkably awesome about that game is every mission you go on literally can be you can challenge yourself to do it, in a stealth mode, all out, just blitzkrieg, whatever you want to do. So I'm going back through the game and just playing it from a different perspective, and I love that. Jean Francois says, "Have you listened to Wondery Inside Jaws before it went behind the paywall? Very entertaining. The whole Inside series was great. Um, Star Wars, Psycho, and Exorcist. I have actually. I think I listened to the first episode of Inside Jaws, and no, it was good. It was a good show. I didn't listen to the Exorcist one, but there's an opportunity for me to shamelessly plug my episode on The Exorcist, which is currently available on the mainstream. It's I believe, the longest episode in the show's history, coming in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes. First part of it is me going over the history of the film. Then I bring in uh, an amazing script writer by the name of Kelly Goodner, who wrote a book on a book about that sort of dissects the 25 greatest horror films going through their screenplay. And then I bring in great friend of the show, Jim Hemphill, to discuss his thoughts on The Exorcist Part 2. So again, shameless plug for that episode, but it up until the John Travolta episode, it was the most downloaded in the show's history.
And I can second that show is amazing. It is. I think I want to say maybe the last episode or the first episode I listened to after you had asked me to come on the show, Dana.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd listened to a bunch of episodes before that, but I think that was the first one after you and I had talked and you'd asked me to come on the show, and I cannot describe just how excited I was, even more than I already was after that episode, um, to come and join what you're doing here and be a part of this podcast. It really just made me giddy, for lack of a better term.
Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I think my only regret is that we didn't do anything to celebrate sort of the 1 year anniversary of you being on the show. We're just well into that almost year and a half now that you've been part of the show, and it's been awesome having you, man. I've made a great friend, so I really appreciate it, and I have a blast talking with you, and I mean the future looks bright. I think we're gonna accomplish a lot
good.
of things.
It looks
So,
good. And now that we're like branching out into things like YouTube live streams, the sky's the limit. Kay Rodriguez asked a couple questions that I just want to address really quick. Famous movies filmed in Salt Lake City. So if it's just Salt Lake City, there's not nearly as many movies filmed. There's a crap ton of movies filmed in Utah, but they're usually in the South. I kind of think a lot of them, The Sandlot is probably the most famous movie filmed in Salt Lake City, although Halloween 4 and 5 were filmed here. There were quite a few TV shows filmed here. If you want to see the really famous movies, they're either filmed out at what we call the Bonneville Salt Flats. And then Kay's second question is most financially successful movie filmed in Salt Lake City. Off the top of my head, it's got to be Independence Day. Independence Day was filmed basically all of the Area 51 scenes were filmed here out in what's called the Bonneville Salt Flats, which, if you ever come to Utah, are very cool to see at least once in your life. They're really kind of overwhelming when you get out there to see them.
if I can shamelessly plug another episode that I did, I had Peter Winther on the show, and he was an associate producer and then a producer working with Roland Emmerich in the 90s, and he was part of that whole Independence Day, pre-production post. I mean, he was basically sat with Emmerich every day when they were making that film. He's got some really interesting insight into that film. He also talks a lot about Stargate, little bit about Universal Soldier. He gives me a very honest look at the 1998 Godzilla film. He talks about, working with Mel Gibson on The Patriot. So that's the Peter Winther episode I would recommend people check out. Ruben asks, by the way, Carmelita says the Extras episode is not to be missed. Carmelita, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Ruben says, hey guys, thanks for doing this again. Question, is the movie star, I got to scroll up here just for a second here. Let's see. He says, hey guys, thanks for doing this again. Question, is the quote movie star basically dead? Once upon a time, the Tom Cruise, Will Smith, Denzel Washington movies were events. Yeah, I mean, now let's see. It's because the A-level actors were in them. Now with superhero movie phenomenon, reboots, franchise, etc., it seems like the brand has killed off the movie stardom. Thoughts? In fact, Ruben, before I read the second part of your question, I was exactly what I was going to say. I said, well, no, the big tentpole films have really, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, have really kind of, I don't want to say hurt the brand, but look, the bottom line is you cannot get someone like The Rock. Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can everybody else hear? Your picture has frozen, but I can hear you.
Yeah. Someone like The Rock can't even, open a movie now these days. Like, it's just really interesting. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, as you know, I think everything's cyclical, right? In the 30s and 40s, Hollywood was based on the studio system, but it was also really based on movie stars, your Cary Grants, your Jimmy Stewarts, your Humphrey Bogarts. And then the 70s kind of hit, and it wasn't really based. Yeah, the people that are starring in those movies we think of now as movie stars, but they weren't at the time. Nobody was going to a Al Pacino movie in 1971, right? They were by 1979, but they weren't by 1971. And that's the thing. I think it's cyclical. We're saying now that the movie stars are dead, but they're not necessarily, because eventually we're going to hit a point where people are going to go see a Chris Evans movie or want to go see a Scarlett Johansson movie. So it always is a cycle. It always comes back one way or the other. And so I don't think the movie star is dead. I think the movie star is just hibernating. And honestly, there's plenty of movie stars that are working every single day. One of my favorite movies from 2 years ago was a movie called Blind Spotting. And you watch that movie, it's a little indie movie, but you watch that movie and tell me that Daveed Diggs is not a fucking movie star in that movie. I don't, you and I are going to have very different definitions of a movie star. So it'll come back.
Let me just go back up here and scroll a couple times here. K. Rodriguez says, shamelessly plug look at the bottom left, whose name is on the banner. Fair enough. Let's see. I appreciate the dynamic you guys have. I'm actually not a huge movie buff. I like older films mostly, but your shows are so damn entertaining. Thank you. Does everybody remember the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure? When towards the end of the film, he's on the set of the Warner Brothers lot and he escapes, and then there's a pet store on fire, and he keeps going inside the pet store to rescue the animals. And every time he goes by there's a tank filled with snakes, and he's waiting to the very last minute. He wants to avoid them as long as possible. I'm having that moment right now with the question that Bobby just asked, which I'm trying to get to it here. Let's see what it says here. Dana, I listened to the Showgirls pod with you and Ashley. Can you tell us the story of how you were a DJ at a strip club and got fired? You teased it but did not tell the story. I don't know.
there's only like a handful of people here that come to these YouTube live streams, Dano. You gotta. I gave the Hibachi Justice origin story, so I really think that you gotta give a little bit of yourself to our dedicated listeners as well.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, this would have been literally 20 years ago. Um, I listen. I was a DJ and I was trying to sort of make ends meet, and an opportunity presented itself to DJ at a strip club. And at the time, I took it. And what was interesting was the first day I got there, the manager of the place took me into his office, and he sat me down and he said, all right, this is what we're going to pay you. You're going to get paid $75 a night, which to me did not seem like a lot of money. Even 20 years ago, I thought that was probably not a lot of money. And he said, but each girl has to tip you out at the end of the night. And the idea is that, the more you help them get lap dances, the more money they make, the more they're going to tip you out. So I ended up making, on a good night, $600-700, which was pretty good for 20 years ago, and it was all cash. The first night I worked, though, he made me sign this 3-page document, which was a zero fraternization policy, which said that I was not allowed to talk to, communicate, hang out, anything with any of the people that worked there, no matter what. I didn't last very long at that. I'm going to leave it there. That's it.
That was pretty much exactly where I expected that story to go, but it was still nice to hear it.
Well, the very first night I worked there, at the end of the night, a couple people came up to me, a couple people that worked there came up to me like, hey, what are you doing after this? And I went, nothing. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I've got my little backpack. I'm putting the straps on. I'm like, oh, nothing. Like, why don't you come hang out with us? I'm like, I really shouldn't. I ended up hanging out with them. Anyway, long story short.
Yeah. That was exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
You're not the first strip club DJ I've known in my life, and your careers all pretty much end the same way. So, Danny has asked a couple of questions that I think are pretty interesting. One is favorite film score / soundtrack. I'm gonna let you answer that one first, Dana, because I'm guessing you probably have one off the top of your head.
Favorite film score / soundtrack. That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I think I've got some revolving answers for that one. I am a huge fan of the Dazed and Confused as far as soundtracks go. As far as scores, I mean, putting Jaws aside, Paul Idol just said Mortal Kombat. I saw that in the theater in '95. That's really tough. All right, I gave my favorite soundtrack. Let me think about score. Mike, I'll go to you for a second.
So soundtrack for me is unabashedly the 1986 Transformers the movie soundtrack. I love that soundtrack. I loved it when I was a kid. I still love it to this day. I bought the Record Store Day vinyl a couple of years ago. I'll just never get tired of that. Score, boy, there's a lot of good film scores. For a long time I was a diehard Hans Zimmer fan before he got boring. But I actually think top to bottom, and I'm going to cheat just a little bit here because I'm going to pick 3 movies, but I'm going to say the Lord of the Rings trilogy has the best score top to bottom that's ever been made for movies. I think it is everything that it's the culmination of what film scoring was building up to. And then Howard Shore just took everything and combined it into one score.
The more I think about it, the more I have to say that I really think the score from Terminator 2 Judgment Day might be my favorite. And it's something you and I have touched on the latest episode that'll be released tomorrow. I love that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. Pulp Fiction soundtrack. Yep. When I was a teenager in high school, I had both the Pulp Fiction soundtrack and the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack on cassette. What was great about both of those soundtracks was he would play sound bites from the movie in between the songs, which was fantastic. So, love that. Let's see.
Yeah, Paul says purely for the touch. You got the
That's
Of course, that's one of the greatest songs ever written.
and when you saw Boogie Nights for the first time, what were your thoughts that he
Oh,
was
my
recording
head
that song?
exploded. My head absolutely exploded when that song came up. I had no idea that that song was going to be in that movie.
Yeah, that was terrific. Let's see here. Let me scroll back here. Just grab a couple more questions here.
Danny,
Okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
Danny asked one other one really quick. Coffee and Cigarettes, Danny. That's the Jim Jarmusch movie, correct? If that is, I think it's a very good movie. It's really entertaining. I think the Steve Coogan bit is probably my favorite part of it.
And I just want to say thank you to, there's a few of you on here that were really saying nice things about the Exorcist 3 episode that Ashley and I did. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. Let's see. My favorite soundtrack ever is Pretty in Pink. I'd like to say I have not seen Coffee and Cigarettes. I remember when that movie came out, but I've actually never seen it. Would we be recommending that as a good watch?
Yeah, I think it's a good watch. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie, so you've got to kind of know going in that it's super indie. Jarmusch is a bit of an acquired taste for some people, but I think I think for the Steve Coogan bit, that alone is worth it. That I think there's other good parts of it, but that bit alone is worth it, and is very entertaining.
Question for everybody watching right now. Well, we're all kind of watching a lot of different stuff on TV. Is there any sort of like comfort movies that people are watching just to help us get through the time? Mike?
Um, so not quite right now for me. I've been trying to take the opportunity to watch a bunch of movies that I haven't watched before. And so that would be kind of what I'm doing. I haven't fallen back on any of my comfort movies. I'm getting there. There was a live stream of Paddington 2, which is one of my favorite go-to comfort movies. The other day, and that got me wanting to watch that. I guess I would say doing the Netflix party to watch Avengement was 100% pure comfort movie, because nothing comforts me more than Scott Adkins. So kind of that's it for me.
Let's see. Kay Rodriguez said, Mike, what's the first movie to watch in theater? Mike, I'm assuming that's what was the first movie you watched in the theater?
Yeah, as best as I can remember, it was Star Wars at the drive-in.
Okay, what's interesting you say that. My from what I remember, Return of the Jedi was the first one that I remember.
Yeah, my parents were very pro movie. That's part of the reason I am who I am. And so we went to see a lot of movies even when I was a kid, because we would go to the drive-in because I could make all the noise I wanted without disturbing other people. And so I saw a lot of movies in the drive-in, a lot that I probably shouldn't have seen. I will never forget. I don't know if anybody's seen a movie called Used Cars. It's a Robert Zemeckis movie with Kurt Russell. It's great, but there's a scene with strippers and they have pasties, and I couldn't have been more than 4 seeing this movie in a theater, and I could not comprehend the concept of pasties, and was very loudly asking my mom about pasties, much to the chagrin of some of the much older people around us. So I will never forget that story.
Wait a second. I'm getting bombarded here with a couple questions. Angie says, Dana, why don't you tell everyone your comfort movies besides Jaws, of course? What's interesting is she knows the answer to that question. I think she wants me to actually tell everybody what I've been watching on heavy rotation for the past 2.5 weeks. Kay Rodriguez says, yes, Dana, your comfort movies. Remember, this is a family show. Well, if everyone's asking, I'll be happy to announce that I have probably watched Breakin' and Breakin' 2 5 times each over the past 2.5 weeks.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry. Those are the absolute epitome of so bad they're good. And I just for fun, I send Angie every morning with our like send her a good morning text, and I always include that with a clip from either Breakin' or Breakin' 2, The Electric Boogaloo. So Listen, it's Turbo and Ozone and Kelly that are going to get me through all of this. They're going to help me get through this self quarantine that we're all facing.
Look, and Breaking 2 introduce you to the goddess amongst mere mortals that is Lucinda Dickey, which
Mhm.
means after y'all watch Breaking 2, you should move on to Ninja 3, The Domination, one of the hands down greatest movies ever made. And again, as you know, I am always right in my movie opinions, so watch Ninja 3. Some people did say what their comfort movies were. Kung Fu Panda, K. Rodriguez, Jarrett said The Birdcage, Carmelita, Tapeheads, and Valley Girl. Thumbs up for Valley Girl. I friggin' love that movie. Um, Paul just said that he's been working his way back through Community. We've kind of been doing that too, Paul. We've been watching. We got way behind. My wife and I are both big CW superhero show fans, and we got way behind on those. So we've been trying to get caught up on those. Eamon says, I have to say I'm over Star Wars. Man, for somebody that I like so much, you and I do not see eye to eye on movies, buddy, but I still love you anyway. um, John
Uh,
Francois, sorry, go ahead, Dana.
no, I was going to say the same thing. Jean Francois says Sho Kosugi is the man. I just want to comment on that real quick, and Eamon just put it up there. I had a VHS dub of Revenge of the Ninja, and I think I mentioned this when we did an episode of the 20th Century Movie Club where I wore that tape out. I have seen Revenge of the Ninja more times than I think is actually safe to admit.
Also filmed in Salt Lake City.
Correct.
The last fight is on. So our tallest building here. You guys are learning more about Utah than you ever wanted. Our tallest building here is called the Church Office Building because, of course, it is, and that is actually where they filmed the final fight of Revenge of the Ninja. So and the park that is close to my house is where they filmed one of the big fights on a playground scene there. So I have a special fondness for Revenge of the Ninja.
Great movie. So I don't know if it's Breaking 2 great, but it's pretty good. I was telling a good friend of mine yesterday. He was asking me, how are you holding up with finding things to watch on TV and or on streaming services. I said I'm getting pretty desperate. Not Apple TV desperate, but pretty desperate. So I was fortunate enough with my new iPhone to get a 1-year subscription for Apple TV, and I'm really having a hard time. Is anybody watching any of the program on Apple TV, Mike?
No, I am not an Apple guy, so I don't have Apple TV, and none of the shows. I know I can do it on my Roku and stuff, but none of the shows looked that interesting. To the one with Jason Momoa is the only one that caught my interest, and apparently, based on the reviews and the feedback, that's like the worst of all their shows. So, I haven't watched any of it.
Let's see. K. Rodriguez says let's all commit to the first season of Black Mirror and break it down next week. All right, I've definitely seen it. I got to get Angie to watch it. Jean Francois says, Dana, I've been dying to know, how did you get to interview Steve DeJarnett? I wish there was some epic story I could tell you, like with the John Travolta, but Jim Hemphill, who's a friend of mine, he's been on the show multiple times. Him and I are friends on Facebook, and they've been friends on Facebook for a while. So Steve just a couple of years ago, popped up in my people you may know on Facebook. And I thought, well, let me just send him a friend request, and he accepted it. And I actually was planning on having Steve on the show almost 2 years ago. For whatever reason, we kind of kept going back and forth, and he could commit to a day that I couldn't, and vice versa. And so ultimately, it just all worked out. And as far as I know, planning on having him back on the show within the next couple of weeks. So, he was amazing to talk to, and just a great guy. And this is an interesting story because I did not really know that he was responsible for writing the screenplay for one of the great Canadian films of all time, Strange Brew. So he definitely had a lot to say about that as well. Let's see here.
Eamon says, you know, the opening to Revenge, or you mean the opening to Revenge of the Ninja wasn't shot in Japan? Eamon, I'm sorry to break your that Canon Films did not actually shoot their movies on location. I'm sorry to burst that bubble for you. K. Rodriguez bringing up that yes, as far as I know, I do believe all the police academies are on Netflix, at least here in the U.S. So, you know, there's some.
That's great news.
Yeah,
that's great news
because those haven't dated at all.
No, especially the first one. Let's see, Mike. You got a question popped in my head. Delta Force. That's a Canon film.
The Chuck Norris Delta Force.
Yeah, that's a Canon film.
Yes, it is.
Was that completely filmed in Israel, do you think?
Yes, because I mean, so for those who don't know, Golan and Globus behind Canon Films were Israeli, so they had access there. So I'm guessing that that was probably, I haven't looked into it, but I'm guessing it was probably filmed all in Israel.
I really like that movie.
I do too. I mean, it's jingoistic as hell. And it hasn't, because of that, you know, depending on your political persuasion, it may or may not have dated really well. But I still think, first of all, the Alan Silvestri score is
amazing.
It's earworm to the nth degree, and I think I really like the pacing of the movie because the first half is almost a very staid and stoic, you know, terrorism drama. And you really build up and then you just get the Delta Force get unleashed and Chuck Norris and Steve James and Lee Marvin go all Delta Force, and it's just fantastic. I really enjoy that movie.
Yeah, no, then like you said, the score by Alan Silvestri, who, you know, I think same year or year before did the score for Back to the Future.
He did it 2 years, or 1 year before. But Silvestri's he's done the Avengers theme is his. Like, he's one of our all-time great film score composers. He's a legend.
Let's see. Kay Rodriguez says the first two are awesome. I'm assuming she's talking about the Police Academy movies. Yeah. Look, I love Police Academy too. I think that's like, I like the first Police Academy. I think it's got, it's got some questionable humor at this point, but I just think there's some really funny laugh out loud moments that are still in Police Academy 2, their first assignment.
I was a big fan of Police Academy 3. That was actually always my favorite. That I don't know why. It just was.
And those movies were all filmed in Toronto.
Eamon points out that American Ninja was a movie that he absolutely wore out on tape as a kid. Yeah, because it rules. I actually think American Ninja 2 is better, but both of them are absolutely fantastic. I will someday, somebody's just going to pay me to talk about Michael Dudikoff for like 4 hours because I can, and I will be happy to do it.
Missing in Action. K. Rodriguez says Missing in Action 1 and 2. Haven't seen them. Missing in Action, is that the one where like the stories are reversed?
Yeah.
Like part 1 is him going back and part 2 is actually him escaping from Vietnam. And is it some kind of crazy story where this was all filmed at the same time or something like that? Or
so there is a great Mark Hartley documentary called Electric Boogaloo about Canon Films. I think it's on Netflix. I know it's on Vimeo. He's posted it for like free, I think, to watch on Vimeo. It's a really great documentary about Canon Films. And they talk about how they shot 1 and 2 back to back, and they were originally supposed to release 1 first, but 1 is a much more meditative, serious war drama. And so Canon decided they wanted to release the 2 first, and that became 1. I actually think they work pretty well if you watch them in the order that they're supposed to be watched in. I'm not the biggest Chuck Norris fan on the face of the earth, but he's very good, as good as Chuck Norris can be in those. And if you watch them in the right order, I think they're actually pretty good. And it's like Breakin', because Breakin's a Canon film, so that's where it gets the name from.
And I'd like to point out that the Breakin' movies combined made over $50 million at the box office. Those were very popular movies when they came out. They're very popular. They're made for next to nothing. I'm going to be a champion for Breaking and Breaking 2 till the very end. I just want everyone to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I will ride or die for Canon films. I mean, look, they get a bad rep because they're exploitation filmmakers, and they are. I mean, but they managed to make, given those confines, some pretty fantastic movies. And they gave a lot of big action stars their start. I mean, whether you like him or not, and if you don't like him, now is a time for quiet contemplation, not to talk to me. Jean-Claude Van Damme got his start because of Canon Films, and the action world would be 1,000% poorer if we never had Van Damme. So I love Canon. Jarrett just said he needs to watch American Ninja to rectify that mistake. Yes, Jarrett, watch American Ninja 1 and 2. You don't need to watch any of the others. They go downhill real fast, but 1 and 2 are fantastic.
Eamon says Superman 4 question mark. Paul Lytle says I get excited for every American Ninja, but I haven't seen any of them in years. And then Jean-Francois says Superman 4 tanked Canon Films. Well, that's an interesting story. That was the summer of 87. I mean, that was the year 1987. What with Canon, and Mike, feel free to jump in and correct me if I've got my facts wrong, but there were 3 big movies that were coming out in 1987 by Canon, and we're talking about Superman 4, Over the Top, and Masters of the Universe, or is Over the Top out of that discussion? I get a little mixed up on that.
I don't remember the exact years, but those are the 3 that actually destroyed Canon. Those are the 3 films that tanked Canon.
Superman 4, if I remember correctly, the Salkins, did they sell the rights to Canon, and then Canon immediately slashed the budget? The film was in pre-production, and they immediately cut the budget in half from it was 34 to 60 to 16 or something like that.
Yeah, and the only way they could get Christopher Reeve back was they gave him a lot more control, which was actually fine. But the idea that Reeve had versus the budget that Canon was willing to provide, not a good combination.
I will go to the ends of the earth to support Over the Top. I love that movie. I did an episode, a couple months ago with my I like to say other Mike that does the show with me every once in a while. And I just had a blast talking about that movie. I love that movie. Again, so bad it's good. If you haven't listened to that episode, I strongly recommend. Eamon says, loved Over the Top and Masters of the Universe, Courtney Cox. So I tried to rewatch Masters of the Universe, and that one, I can't get into that one no matter how hard I try. But I love Over the Top. And Superman 4, I was 9 years old when that film came out, and I went to the theater to see it, I remember, and loved it as a 9-year-old, and now, of course, I can see the minor flaws in the film, if you will.
Well, here's the thing with Superman 4. It has a dude named Christopher Reeve in it, and therefore it is not completely without value. It's a Correct. Bad movie, and the special effects are, I mean, they hurt thine eyes to watch. But as long as Christopher Reeve is playing Superman, there's value in watching that, especially because we're not going to get it anymore. And I will go to bat. I will be the one, unlike you, to go to bat for Masters of the Universe, because as a comics guy and a Jack Kirby fan, that is the most Jack Kirby ass movie that has ever been made. It's not really a Masters of the Universe movie. It's a Jack Kirby New Gods movie. And once you view it as that, it's awesome.
Bobby says the Canadian Carl Anderson. That's great. That's from Over the Top. Yep. When the ring announcers, he's like, from the Truckers League, or no, from the Teamsters, Henry Bosco. And what's great about this announcer, in case you weren't aware, it's a double elimination, and that's a bit we get into in that entire episode. It's fucking fantastic. I love that movie. If you have not seen Over the Top, at least here in America, it is streaming for free on YouTube, so there is no excuse. You need to watch it. Jean-Francois, double elimination, just in case you weren't aware. If Hawks loses, don't worry. There's still more movie left, because this is a double elimination.
Okay, so here's a good question: is "Winner Takes It All" the best Sammy Hagar song?
Oh, is that the? Absolutely.
Would
Hands down.
that would be my agreement. Even I think it's even better than any song he did with Van Halen. I think "Winner
Yep.
Takes It All" is his masterpiece.
Although to be fair, I really do like the Right Now song that they do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, no, he
Great
did.
song.
There was a lot of good Van Halen songs, but "Winner Takes It All," man, that's the only one that's still on a regular playlist of mine because I've got a regular playlist of like 80s action movie theme songs. So it's got like Hearts on Fire from Rocky 4 by John. It's got like 7 John Cafferty songs because that was John Cafferty's thing in the 80s.
Yep.
But yeah. Um,
I have the same. So it's nice to know I'm not the only one that listens to 80s songs from movies. I listened to the one from Commando. I listened to the one from obviously the Karate Kid, Joe Esposito. You're the best around. What other ones have I listened to? I always listen to Chasing the Angels from the Iron Eagle 2 soundtrack.
Yep.
I invite everyone to look that one up.
Where the boys run free. Yep.
That's the jam.
Yep.
I was listening to that last night. It's good to know I'm not the only one that does that.
Is the lead singer of Loverboy, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. I had that soundtrack. Well, and I have the original Iron Eagle soundtrack on vinyl because I sent you that picture after we talked about it. So Kay Rodriguez is saying she's throwing out a bunch of Van Halen songs. I'm not saying that his songs with Van Halen weren't good. I'm just saying "Winner Takes It All" is the best song that he ever did. Bobby,
I like it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Bobby says he's got the same list.
Let's see. Kay Rodriguez says "Take It to the Limit" from Scarface. Great.
Yep.
Paul says "Road of the Gypsy" from Iron Eagle. Great song. But of course, I think that movie is always going to be known for one vision more than anything. Although I love the song they play, Mike, you can tell me the name of it, during the race. When they're racing, he's racing in the Cessna and against the motorcycle.
I can't.
I'm old enough to rock and roll.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly
great song.
what it is.
But Paul, I'll agree with you. "Road of the Gypsies," great song. And see, Danny says you just can't go wrong with the 80s. "I Can't Drive 55" is epic too. It was in Back to the Future Part 2.
We are all old. We have just all dated ourselves, which is fine. I mean, I know it was hard for everybody listening to believe, given, this not gray hair that I have. Kay Rodriguez said, "Don't you forget." Well, yeah, but I mean, "Don't You Forget About Me's" in a whole other league. Like,
yeah, that's in the pop cultural lexicon of 1980s. Yeah,
that's just one of the best songs that's ever been written.
But if I had to say, if pressed right now, because it just popped in my mind, if I was to think about my favorite 80s movie soundtrack or songs from 80s movies, it has to be from the Rad soundtrack. I absolutely love that soundtrack.
I have that soundtrack on vinyl as well, and I don't know if you saw, but Vinegar Syndrome is releasing a 4K UHD remaster of Rad.
That might be the greatest news I've heard all year.
I've already got my pre-order in.
I know this has not been the best year for news, for exciting news, but Rad never even made it to DVD, if I remember correctly.
It did not. It got tied up. So Talia Shire actually owns the rights.
No kidding.
Or I guess her estate now. And they were not willing to really release it. I have the original Laserdisc, but it never made it to DVD. And so all that was out there were some bootleg Laserdisc rips that you could find. But I guess because Vinegar Syndrome, and shout out to, if you guys don't follow him, Brad Henderson on Twitter is one of the acquisition guys for Vinegar Syndrome. And he has, in the last couple of years, gotten the rights to a couple of movies that I thought were holy grails. They released Spookies this year, which you've never seen. It is one of the most mind-blowingly weird horror movies you'll ever see. And they're releasing Rad later. So it's awesome. Vinegar Syndrome's a great label if you're not getting any other stuff.
I want to go back to something that Angie said way earlier on the chat. I meant to bring it up. Her and I tried to watch The Hunt the other day and made it about 20 minutes through it. I'm curious that anyone who's watching right now, has anybody watched The Hunt yet? Mike?
I haven't seen it yet. As you know, I have an affinity for the Most Dangerous Game as a plot device, but I have not seen The Hunt yet. It's not one that I have been able to like justify the $20 rental price for.
Sure.
When it actually comes out, and I can get it for $6, I'll check it out. But
I will say this about the film, and I will keep it 100% spoiler free because I've only seen the first 20 minutes of it. I think the first 10 minutes of that film set up what I thought was going to be exactly what you said, Mike. Like The Most Dangerous Game very much reminded me of what we would have gotten like with, the old Battle Royale movie. And I was really interested. Then it sort of takes this crazy turn into like this political landscape that I'm not going to get into. But I'm care to say, like, I'm a pretty liberal person. But even I was cringing at some of the dialogue in the movie, and I know her and I just looked at each other like, all right, we'll stop this. And I have not really wanted to go back and revisit the film. It could have been subtle, but it wasn't. It was just in your face, and it was just very cringeworthy. So I would say wait until it hits a streaming platform where you don't actually have to pay for it.
Fair enough. Danny just brought up the Cure soundtrack, which she admits was 90s, but yes, the Cure soundtrack is absolutely incredible. And Burn is, or not the Cure, sorry, the Crow soundtrack is absolutely incredible. And Burn by the Cure is one of their best songs. I absolutely love it.
Mike K. Rodriguez is asking you, what do you think about Ready or Not? Sorry, the question is not related to the topic.
We don't have a topic.
I saw the movie in the theater, loved it.
Yeah,
had a great time with it.
I thought Ready or Not was fantastic. First of all, I've been a big fan of Samara Weaving ever since she appeared on Ash vs. Evil Dead. And then if you haven't seen Mayhem, Joe Lynch's Mayhem, we just did that for Dana and I are friends with the Patrick Bromley that runs F This Movie, which was another podcast we encourage you all to check out. He had a Twitter Film Fest birthday and we watched Mayhem, and I had seen Mayhem a couple times before, and every time I watch it I love it more and more, and she's in that. So I really liked Ready or Not. I thought it was pretty terrific. And it's actually amusing because I actually just tweeted out this week that one of the comfort shows Kelsey and I have been watching is called Republic of Doyle. And the guy that plays Samara Weaving's husband in Ready or Not is one of the main characters in that, playing a completely different role. And that's one of my favorite things. When you have an actor in your head as one way, and then you see them in a movie or a TV show and they're completely different, and you realize, oh, right, they're actors. That's what they do. So, yeah, I loved Ready or Not.
I can go ahead and break the news now that Patrick's coming on the show tomorrow. We're going to be recording tomorrow afternoon. Really excited to have him back on. As some of you know, Patrick's podcast, F This Movie, is not only one of my all-time favorites, but it is, in fact, one of the podcasts that inspired me to want to do a podcast. So any opportunity I can get to have him on the show, I think this is going to be the fourth time that he's been on the show in the 6.5-year history of this podcast. It's always a big deal to me because he was just a really, really big inspiration to me, and I always enjoy talking with him, and when I have him on the show, I really tend not to have like an outline of what we're going to talk about. We usually just pick up the conversation and just start going. So I'm looking forward to having him on tomorrow.
Well, and I need to second that because the only reason that Dana and I even know each other is because of F This Movie and Patrick. Because that's how I found Dana, is because I was listening to Patrick and Adam's guest episodes, and my friends that I've made through F This Movie are the people that gave me the courage to actually reach out to Dana when he put out the call. So, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, essentially, we're all tied through F This Movie. None of us would be here if it wasn't for that podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. So let's see. Kay Rodriguez says, I love her, referring to Samara Weaving. I did see The Babysitter, by the way. That was batshit crazy in a good way. I mean, that is a compliment. Emily Blunt is the actor to me. To see her in Devil Wears Prada, then Sicario, then A Quiet Place is a hell of a roller coaster ride. Can I tell everybody that I went to go see A Quiet Place in the theater, and I made it about 7 minutes into the film and realized that a movie that basically has no sound to it is disastrous for me if there's anyone else in the theater because and I waited. Here's the true story. I waited 6 weeks for that movie to come. Like it was out for 6 weeks because I really wanted to see it in the theater. And I'm telling you, I pick a Sunday night, 8:30 at night. I think this is it. There's not going to be anyone in here. I get my ticket. I sit down. Now, it didn't have the twosies, the two seats on either side. It was a smaller theater, which you'd expect after 6 weeks. And I get in there, and I'm literally the only one in the theater. And this is like my own private screening room. And then 5 minutes before the movie starts, in walks, a group of like 20 teenagers. Like they're all just one big group. And then instead of like just sitting all like on one row, they sort of just dispersed amongst the entire theater. So there was nowhere for me to go because normally I would try to move away from them, but I couldn't. And I mean, look, I still haven't seen that movie because it gives me such anxiety about it. I mean, it's just, I've heard good things about it, but just not conducive for me to try to watch a movie like that. No, not in the theater, which is a real shame.
No, it is, especially, you have the worst luck of anybody I know. I mean, I have bad movie luck, but man, you put mine to shame.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think about. I don't know if I've got enough time to go into that. I know I teased a movie theater rant story the last time, but I don't think I've got the time to go into this one. God, I promise the next time I will. Just we're an hour into this stream, so I can't do the 15 minutes it's going to take there. Danny says movie theater rant incoming. Yes, absolutely. K Rodriguez, yes, please tell me, Mike. What are the good film podcasts out there like besides Dana, like Classic Film Jerks I don't like? Okay.
Go ahead, Dana.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always recommend this movie first and foremost. Other than that, I tend to listen to more comedy podcasts that are related to movies, like the How Did This Get Made? We Hate Movies, things like that. I could give a recommendation to the Now Playing podcast. I think they do a pretty good job on their show as well. I know I've listened to probably 300 of their episodes. They've got more than 1,000, so I could recommend Now Playing as well.
So I'm pulling up my podcast list on my phone here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. Bobby just brought up Chat the Movies, and I feel like an asshole for not mentioning Chat the Movies. Well, those guys are fantastic, and I should have done what Mike did. I should have opened up my phone and just looked. No, Chat the Movies, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Chat the Movies is great.
Love those guys.
Yeah.
Love those guys.
F this movie. Again, we can't stress that enough. Some of the ones that I'm going to kind of recommend are a little more in-depth. So I think that Mike White has one called The Projection Booth that is really, really in-depth. It is not just a comedy podcast. It's film school. And so it's really fantastic. I really, really like Patrick Willems has one. And Dana and I are both big fans of Patrick Willems. He's got one that's called Can't Get Enough of Keanu, where he and his two roommates are going through Keanu Reeves' entire filmography. Anything with Brian Sauer. So Just the Discs and why am I drawing a blank on the other one that he does with Elric Kane that I'm scrolling down to find? But anything with Brian Sauer is great. Our friend Daniel Epler has a horror podcast called Cobwebs. There are so many good film podcasts out there. Film Threat is fine. I like it. It's good. It's not a bad podcast. It's just Film Threat has a certain demeanor, and it's actually kind of part of the reason that I don't always love How Did This Get Made? Because as anybody that's listened to me on the podcast knows, I defend garbage. I think there's value in almost any movie. And so I'm not the biggest fan of podcasts that make fun of movies. That's just my personal preference. I'd rather listen to a podcast that tries to find the value in a bad movie, because I think almost any bad movie you can find some actor. I remember there was a movie crypt where they were interviewing the great Ray Wise. And Adam Green asked him, how do you handle getting a bad review? And Ray Wise just said, well, I've never had a bad review. And if you think about it, it's probably true, because in spite of the fact that Ray Wise has made a lot of bad movies, has he ever been bad in one? I've never seen him give a bad performance. So even the worst movies always have some sort of value.
I will defend How Did This Get Made a little bit more, because I think, especially Jason Mantzoukas on the show, I think he finds the good in those quote unquote bad movies, because half the time, the first thing he'll say is, this movie is awesome. And I think he embraces this so bad it's good type situation. So I'm going to slightly defend that show just because of him, because I think he's a great personality on the show.
Well, and don't make no mistake, I just use that as an example, and that's why I said I don't always, because I've had plenty of good times. I mean, How Did This Get Made dedicated an entire episode. They brought Lexi Alexander and Patton Oswalt on to talk about Lexi's Punisher Warzone. So, I mean, they are not cynical and sarcastic. I just kind of use that. There is a lot of film bro. I think you'd agree, Dana. There's a lot of sort of film bro douchebagism in film podcasts. You kind of have to be on the lookout for that. I wouldn't say that How Did This Get Made is that at all, but
Sure.
But that's just kind of my thing. Paul just asked, Troll 2 has value. I don't know, Paul. I had a great time watching Troll 2. So it has value because I rolled on the floor watching it, and on top of that, Best Worst Movie is one of the best film documentaries ever made. So yeah, I'm glad Troll 2 exists.
Yeah, no, I've actually never seen Troll 2, but I've seen Best Worst Movie, and I thought that was a fantastic documentary. Jean-Francois says Maltin, referring to Leonard Maltin on Movies, has great guests. Yeah,
and
I agree.
And his daughter Jessie is as brilliant as he is, so she's great.
And Leonard Maltin was my guy in the 1980s, because if you remember, he was the guy on Entertainment Tonight. And I'd always watch Entertainment Tonight just to have him give his 2 seconds or 30-second soundbite on whatever film he was talking about. You guys have never, to my knowledge, mentioned The Room. Mike, do you want to mention The Room? Do you want to break the 6.5-year streak of not mentioning The Room, or do you want to talk about it?
I don't know what there is to say about it. It's Jarrett, so I wanna mention it because he asked, and there's few better supporters. I came to The Room late. I don't get the joy out of it that a lot of other people do. Probably because I came to it late. But it to me isn't. Again, I don't like watching movies to make fun of them. It's just me. I just don't. I've had friends who've made movies. I know how hard it is to make a movie. And so anybody that can actually make a movie and figure out how to somehow get that into theaters or video stores or on demand, that's an accomplishment. So a lot of those movies, I'd rather just not say anything about. So I will not actually say anything about The Room, because other than I think it's great that Tommy Wiseau actually made a movie.
That's what I was going to say about it. And I think the story of the movie being made, and I'm not talking about the James Franco movie, disaster movie. I'm talking about the actual story of this film getting made is fascinating, because this is a time when things were still shot on film. This was a time before you could do a movie on your iPhone. Although, and that's not a knock on iPhones, because Soderbergh did one on an iPhone. So, I respect that movie got made. I will, since you've asked, I will say that I have watched the movie, and I'm glad that I watched it, but it's not one that I'm eagerly anticipating watching again. Like, I know that they do watch parties, kind of like what they do with, oh my God, I'm drawing the biggest blank. Yeah, thank you. I know they do film watch parties for The Room, and it's not something I would want to do, but I respect the fact that that movie got even made, because that was during a time before we could ever, just sit there and make one ourselves and make one of somewhat decent high production quality. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's just anybody. And look, this is always one of the other things I joke about, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, Dana, of when people are like, "Oh, this movie's the worst movie ever made," and it's something that actually got released in 1,000 theaters, and it's like, oh, you and I really hang out in different corners of the film world because I am deep in the ass end of Amazon Prime watching movies that were shot in some dude's backyard where he paid a couple of strippers, $50 to come and get naked while he shot them with a VHS camera. Like, those are really bad movies. Those are the kind of movies. So something like The Room is borderline professionally done, I think. I mean, the shots are reasonably well lit. The acting is passably okay. Like, I've seen 1,000 movies that are worse than The Room. Jarrett just said he thinks it's genuinely entertaining, and that there's a lot of bad films that aren't entertaining at all. I'd agree with you on that, Jarrett. There's a lot of bad films that are just bad, and The Room's not one.
I will say this. I'll be far more critical of a movie that costs $300 million to make than a film that costs 500,000. Just because with those type of budgets, when the budget isn't the issue, I think I'll be a little more. I don't even want to use the term critical, but just I'll be quicker to call out the $300 million film before I'm gonna call out the $100,000 film.
Yeah, no, take a movie like Suicide Squad, right? And as you can all see behind me, I am obviously very pro DC Comics and even DC movies. I am actually kind of a Batman versus Superman defender once the Ultimate Cut came out. Suicide Squad, however, there is no excuse for a movie with that talent, that budget, and that kind of uh, those kind of resources to be that bad. I will always be so much harder on a movie like that than I will some dude with an iPhone who gets some friends together over the course of a week or a month or 6 months to shoot a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mike, what do you think? We're at 71 minutes.
Yeah, we've had some people say that they want us to go longer, but the problem is I also noticed that like our comments start dwindling. I always sort of
Yeah.
gauge it by our comments, and I know that as much as you enjoy listening to us talk, we're not that dynamic that you're not going to keep commenting. So I think it's probably a good time to call it a night.
Yeah, there's already people signing off saying goodbye. Kay Rodriguez, thank you. Amen, thank you. You've been up late. Thanks for staying up with us. Just want to remind everybody that tomorrow, part 2 of Mike and I's discussion on the Terminator franchise will be released, along with I've got an episode that Eamon and I recorded a couple days ago. That's going to be out. That's going to be part of the lockdown sessions. I mentioned I'm recording with Patrick Bromley tomorrow. Mike and I have already recorded our 3rd episode of The Terminator, so I'm going to try to get that out as quick as possible. Thanks, Bobby. And we are going to be recording again this Sunday. And Mike, I'm going to leave it up to you. You want to set up a Netflix watch party? I'm on board. Just give me a time.
All right. I'll figure something out.
Perfect. Well, Mike, thank you as always. Guys, thank you for watching. And, of course, we're going to have many more of these to come.
Yeah, thank you, everybody that joined us. We love you all. We cannot thank you all enough for doing this. So we'll let you know when the next one's coming up. Thanks, guys.